Hey, Dr. Mike here. Have you heard of the disease of kings? If not, stick around to learn if you are at risk.
You're listening to Live Foreverish, a show dedicated to helping you live just a little longer. Here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Crystal Gossard.
All right, welcome to Live Foreverish. Today we're talking about gout, Dr. Crystal.
I'm happy we're talking about this.
Sometimes that's interesting. Do you have gout?
It runs in my family.
Oh, there you go. All right. Yeah, but the disease of kings, right? That's most people in the old days. Old days is still true now, but it was meat consumption. It was the kings and the queens and the royalty having those crazy parties and all that food. I don't know if they had crazy.
Well,
parties,
no, it's the meat. It was the alcohol, and the poor people didn't have all that
stuff. Right. So gout is basically a form of arthritis. People need to know that. It's a crystalline type arthritis. It happens because of the accumulation of urate crystals in the joints. Listen, they usually are brief, the attacks, but they can be debilitating when you have one.
That's what I hear. My family members, like, you don't even want the covers to touch your feet.
It's like everything is overly sensitive and that kind of stuff, and it throbs. There's a lot of throbbing with this, and it occurs most often in men. And
you're also seeing postmenopausal women. It's starting to kind of increase.
Interesting.
In those individuals.
Hormonal link, something going on there. So basically what happens, uric acid is the culprit here, and it comes from a specific type of metabolism called a purine, which you find in certain meats and cheeses and alcohol and all that kind of stuff. And you end up getting hyperuricemia, which hyperuricemia in and of itself doesn't mean you have gout. It's a risk factor.
Exactly.
For developing gout, and it predisposes you to getting those crystals, those urate crystals in your joints,
building up. Yep.
So let's go through some of the initial signs and stuff of gout.
Well, it's pain.
It's pretty much
immediate pain. I mean, it comes on really fast, not gradual, and you wake up in the morning, or it comes on at night, but usually kind of first
early
thing.
Morning. I've heard early morning is kind of the key.
First thing, you wake up, and typically, now I know you've said not so much, but typically the joint between the big toe and the ball of the foot is often affected. Most often.
Yeah, no,
however,
I'm not. No. I just, because that's what people think. That's the only place.
Correct.
It's not. That's all I meant.
But it's usually one location.
Yeah.
Used typically.
Yeah.
For the first, especially that
Yeah.
first kind of attack.
Yeah. Most people that first attack, wherever it's at, that's where they're going to deal with it most of the time.
Yes.
Right.
And then so you also may have fever, of course, some redness. You'll have an elevation of white blood cells, and that's typically, I don't think it's very difficult to identify. I think this is gout.
It's pretty
when it first comes on.
Yeah, it's so painful. It's pretty clear. Most doctors don't have a problem diagnosing it. We do know that the causes of all this is probably linked to some genetics and some lifestyle stuff, right?
Right, but I think we have to take a pause for the cause for the genetics, because unfortunately,
a pause for the cause,
because many people kind of suffer in silence, or they may not go to their doctor because they feel ashamed. And sometimes it's from their family members that, like, maybe it's something that they are doing, but understanding that there is a genetic basis is not the fault of the sufferer. Right. Although red meat is associated, it doesn't mean that person's consuming an overly large amount of the red meat. It's just because of their genetics.
Yeah,
they're more likely to kind of build up the uric acid.
Your purine metabolism is there's enzymes, there's proteins in there. Mm-hmm. It's a metabolic pathway, and you're going to be a little different than me.
Right.
Right. And so, yeah, it's not necessarily meaning somebody has gorged themselves with meat and beer, but that's the stigma.
But then sometimes people
But sometimes it is. Yeah. No. Sometimes it is.
So that's something to consider. But we do see that there are specific genes involved in gout's inflammatory process.
Yeah. Now, here's what's interesting, and I think this is a very important point to bring out and talk a little bit about, is even though gout usually has an attack, that's at a there'll be an initial one, and then it'll clear, and then maybe you'll have another one later, whatever, and it could be very different for people, right? It's all kind of all over the place, but what we're learning is in between those times when you're feeling pretty good, there's still some urate crystals floating around causing inflammation.
Right, and that's when you're seeing the elevated uric acid levels. That's the crazy part. When someone's actually like in the middle of an attack, their uric acid levels may not be elevated.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you have to confirm that elevated uric acid either before like 2 to 4 weeks after the attack to really achieve kind of that accurate uric acid concentration. So it's really between the attack is where you're having that uric acid elevated. Those crystals are forming and kind of brewing up.
People, I don't know if you watch on YouTube, you can see what she's doing. I don't know if this is brewing.
So
most people
I thought
think
that was interesting.
Brewing. Like you're brewing the big, pot. And so we're going to get into foods and stuff in a moment, right? The purine foods, but just other common triggers: infection. This is a big one. As a radiologist, we were always taught to watch out for this. Is contrast media. Like when you're doing CT scans or MRI scans with contrast, one of the warnings is if you have a bad joint, if it gets pain, go see your doctor.
Oh, that's what that
could be associated
tell
with
someone.
it. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
You have to tell them that. Acidosis, and then maybe some trauma, chemotherapy. And it is associated with like psoriasis, some link there as well. So, at the end of the day, this is a very painful type of arthritis. It can be debilitating. It needs to be treated and controlled because you can go down and get chronic gout, which is what you don't want. Now you start getting crystals all over the place, and that's not good.
True, and now you're damaging your joints and have chronic inflammation.
Yeah. A lot of people ask, we always like to share Google and stuff, right? Trending questions. One of the questions about gout is, will it go away on its own?
It can, in about 2 weeks.
And it does in most people. Even though you do nothing, it will. But you remember, you want to control that inflammation. You want to control the uric acid. That's why I think treatment is so important.
Yeah, because if you don't treat it, then the attack can reoccur.
Right. Let's go into foods.
Yeah. So what are those high purine foods? We mentioned red meat, but also pork, lamb, which is not pork's considered the other white meat.
Yeah, isn't it? Yeah. But in this case,
seafood,
anchovies, our
sardines,
favorite
mussels,
stuff.
scallops, trout, tuna, alcoholic beverages. Specifically, I know we weren't going to go into it, but specifically
Sweetened.
beer and liquor. Yeah. And then high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, and I did. This was a long time ago. When it comes to beer, the beers that have more of the malt.
Oh,
so the darker beers, heavier beers, IPAs, one of my favorite, Indian Pale Ale. Those are going to have more of the carbs, more of the sweetness in it. Those are probably more associated with
the gout.
With the gout.
The gout attack.
So low calorie, low purine diet, and one of the best you can do is
plant-based diet.
Yeah.
Whole food plant-based diet. I do want to say that. And we're not talking about eating a bunch of fake meat.
Because there may be stuff in that you don't want.
Because people think plant-based, AKA vegan, and that's not really what we're talking about. No. But there was a study published in JAMA Open Network last year, and they reviewed over 122,000 participants, and found that men and women who had the highest adherence to a healthy plant-based diet had a 21% lower risk of gout than those who adherence was among the lowest.
Yeah.
And so we had some more context here that we didn't include, but they kind of grouped the plant-based diet to those who were really following a healthy plant-based diet with fruit, vegetables, green
Good
leafies,
stuff. Yeah.
versus a plant-based where they were just kind of taking out meat but still eating potatoes.
Well, don't knock potatoes too much. We're knocking everything here. But now let me back. When you say plant-based, is that 100%? Or is that like our 80-20 rule? 80% plant-based, 20% meats that aren't associated with purines and stuff?
So more of like whole food, plant-based, not having the red meat at all, or not having meat.
Not having meat at all. Okay, interesting. And then because other people also talk about anti-inflammatory diets, but if you're following the plant-based, the real good healthy one, that's anti-inflammatory.
Yes, but some people, and that's where we say you can have plant-based and go to, it's readily available to have sugar, sweets, these plant-based desserts. There's a bakery around the corner where it's all plant-based.
But still a lot of sugar.
It's still a lot of sugar and refined carbs. And so you still have to watch that. So when we say, the anti-inflammatory diet, that means limiting pro-inflammatory foods.
Yeah. So we're going to get into kind of, I think the gist of what a lot of people want is like, how do we treat all this? Now, there are conventional treatments we'll get into, but there's also nutrient add-ins we'd like to share with you as well. And so let's first talk about when somebody, has an acute attack, what's probably going to be prescribed for them by their doctor. We know some form of an NSAID is going to be given, probably, right? Control the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, and then most likely some steroids.
Yeah, so if it's just an isolated area, they may even give you an intra-articular injection of a steroid.
Those are rough.
Just get it right in there.
Those are rough.
Well,
But
it can quickly get rid of that attack.
If you could get through it, about 5 minutes later, you're feeling 100% better.
Well, let me tell you, you deal with it one pain or the other. Which one?
And then that's for isolated. If you have, and that's I don't know what percent that is. That's probably most people, I think, at least in an initial attack. But not every. Again, you guys, not everybody is the big toe. It can be in other places. It could be multiple joints, and if it's multiple joints, in those cases, it's probably oral or intramuscular, because they're not going to go through every one of your joints. That's just crazy. Yeah. Okay. So that's probably what. And then I've colchicine, which is disrupting your inflammatory process. That's a very common drug that's prescribed as well. But now, what are we gonna? Okay, so that's acute though. So we know. So you're basically just helping it heal faster, resolve faster, because it probably will resolve on its own. But you don't want to be in pain like that for 2 weeks.
Correct.
So you're going to get treated this way. What are we on the conventional side? What are we doing nowadays for long-term control?
Yeah, so there are 3 main strategies. You can inhibit uric acid production. You can increase excretion of uric acid. And there's also a way where you can give your body the enzyme, because we don't have the enzyme to kind of break down the uric acid. So you can give yourself, or the enzyme is available that helps you to sort of digest or degrade the purines.
Yeah. This is where inhibiting uric acid production is probably the most common approach. That's your allopurinol, very classic.
First line treatment.
It basically is an inhibitor of one of these important enzymes in that metabolic process. And there's other ones in there, but that's pretty much the. Speaking of kings, that's the king probably of the gout medicine, right?
Yes.
And then, again, as you said, there's increased uric acid excretion. I don't think, there's just choices there, and that might be helpful for some people. And then the recombinant one is interesting.
I think so. I think it's really cool. It's giving us enzymes that we typically don't have. So
and I wonder how they do, like because if you can actually get that into your cells' DNA, You could replicate better.
Oh.
But I know this is not that. This is just giving the enzyme. But imagine now going to the next step, the genetic level. Ooh, genetic therapy.
Oh, that would be, what do they call it? I can't now. It left my brain, where you can now chop up your DNA and kind of
splice it and stuff.
Splice it. Yeah,
it's genetic
That's
treatment.
on the horizon.
It's on the horizon. It's actually really exciting. So those are going to be your classic stuff. But there is good news on the natural side of things. There are nutrient add-ins that we'd like to share with you that talk to your doctor about, and these aren't going to hurt to add. You've already talked about vitamin C when we did. What was that? We did a reel or something on this.
We did, yes.
And you got all excited about the vitamin C.
Because it's just 500 milligrams of vitamin C, a nice, like an average dose of vitamin C. And we found that there was a 12% reduction in new gout diagnosis in participants who received that 500 milligrams of vitamin C. And this was an analysis from a big group of over 14,000 men enrolled in a study.
And that was oral, right?
Yes.
Yeah, oral vitamin C. So simple.
Yeah.
It's cheap. And we probably need it anyways.
Just a daily add-in.
Yeah, a daily add-in 500 milligrams.
Yeah, if you have gout, then that's, that should be something that you take
I like
every
this
day.
one. Coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Another simple one, right? Now, let's first talk about what the study we have here is, and then we'll talk about the add-in as a nutrient. This is just looking at coffee drinking, right? And you had I think, and I'm not going to get it on it. And this was a big meta-analysis too.
Right, but there was a lot of coffee involved.
There was. Well, I'm going to get to it.
for the dose.
Right, but this is a meta-analysis. We like those, right? Pooling of all that data, 9 studies, over 175,000 men and women. And what they concluded is that if men drank between 1 to 3 cups per day, which that's not so bad. I mean, I do 2 shots of my espresso.
Okay, so you're almost there.
You only have 1 cup a day?
Well, unless I'm really tired, but 1 cup.
Okay, all right. Well, that's not good because
I don't
for
want
women,
heart palpitations.
because for women you need 4 to 6.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
So men who drank 1 to 3 cups and women who drank 4 to 6 cups, there was a lowering of the serum uric acid levels. Another study kind of looked at the same thing, saw the same association, and claimed that this was a nice way to reduce the risk of gout.
Yeah, so let's go back to that coffee. Let's just realize that our average coffee cup is 2 servings. So maybe I do drink more, because usually in these studies, 1 cup is typically about 5 or 6 ounces. And some of if you go and get like a 12-ounce coffee, that's
that's huge. That's like 3 servings.
That's a medium. Yeah. At Dunkin' Donuts.
I think in the old days, I remember my grandma. She used to have her coffee cups, and they were smaller.
Right.
They were. I don't know what size they were, but they were not the mugs most people use today.
Right. So when we say a cup, we're not talking a true 8-ounce cup.
Yeah.
We're talking about 5 ounces.
Yeah, the normal coffee serving and stuff like that. Okay. So it's not. So maybe it's not so bad.
So maybe it's not so bad. That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Now, again, we know we're fans of coffee. We're also fans of standardized coffee add-ins, nutrient add-ins, because there are key compounds in coffee that are helpful for so many things, sugar issues and stuff like that. I wonder what's going on there. Like, do we know? Like, for instance, we know chlorogenic acid in coffee is good for sugar levels.
And we do know gout is associated with diabetes, overweight, obesity.
You think it's a
just
sugar
like
issue?
a metabolic syndrome. But coffee is also anti-inflammatory.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it's a multimodal approach.
So I wonder if you don't want to drink. Although these studies they drank coffee, but if you don't want to do that, not everybody likes coffee.
Maybe try
a nutrient add-in. Something to think about.
Know.
They're out there. Good for your heart. Good for sugar. Anyway, give it a shot. All right, the last one. What's not the last one? We have a few more here. I think Chinese herbs. There's some that have been used for quite some time to treat gout, inhibit that main enzyme that allopurinol does. Cinnamon, that's a good one. Polygonum cuspidatum.
Oh, yes.
Did I say that right? I think I got pretty close. And there's other ones in there if you want to try those.
Well, the cinnamon for sure. The polygonum, I think I've had that before. I need to brush up on my Chinese herbs,
I think they all fall into the warming herbs and spices. That's why cinnamon's there. That would be my guess.
But one that we do know, Terminalia balearica, and then to a lesser extent, Terminalia chabula. But both of these inhibit that enzyme involved in uric acid production, so it helps to lower uric acid. We have research in the two groups, of course, your active group, your placebo group in a randomized trial, 88 participants that had high uric acid levels, and they were randomized to 250 or 500 milligrams of Terminalia balearica twice per day for 24 weeks. And there was a significant reduction in uric acid in as early as 4 weeks. So this is, So they started seeing results pretty early in this, but they went out 12 weeks. It was a 24-week
study.
Or
24, yeah. Okay. That's great. Terminalia. So there's some choices there. Now, hot off the press.
And this is when we say hot off the press. I want to clarify. Yeah. We're filming this March 2025.
And this came out, this study was published in March 2025 on vitamin D.
Now, you know what surprised me about this study, and I guess we should tell them the details.
Well, yeah.
They really didn't increase vitamin D to levels that we would consider optimal. So this study included 7,337 people with gout, those with serum vitamin D of at least 18 nanograms per milliliter had a 28% lower risk of all-cause mortality during an 11.4 year median follow-up compared to gout patients whose vitamin D levels were lower.
Right.
So we're seeing some promise here.
Yeah, I think it's good. I mean, listen, again, like vitamin C, vitamin D is not going to hurt you.
Yes.
Go ahead and add it to it. And this is a consistent thing we see across the board with vitamin D studies, is either they don't look at blood levels, or when they do, they go with standard conventional blood levels, which right there, you're going to get better efficacy at what we believe.
Right.
The higher blood levels.
Yeah. Well, what were the levels of the other people?
Yeah, well, if they're like average people, very low.
Improvements at 18 nanograms per milliliter?
No, it's not.
Wow.
All right. So anyways, there's a list of nice nutrient add-ins to give it a shot if you are suffering with gout. Talk to your doctor, of course. And hopefully this information was helpful. Don't forget, you go to liveforeverish.com where you can download, like, share, comment, review.
Yes.
And subscribe so you never miss a show. And there's tons of episodes there. And then our sponsor, Life Extension, wants to say thank you. Go over to lifeextension.com. Use the discount code podcast. You'll get 10% off, $50 or more, plus free shipping and handling. That's podcast.
Yes. And we're looking for some fans.
Yeah.
We could do fan of the week.
Ooh.
Send us a comment.
I like that. Fan
of the week. We'll highlight your comment on our next show.
Okay. I'm Dr. Mike. That's
Dr. Crystal.
Thanks for listening.